It was April. Life seemed to spring afresh from every nook and corner. Mitali was sitting in a temple with her brother and Bobby. Her little niece was in her lap. It was her Mundan. The little child was crying hard and the temple bells were also ringing loud. Mitali didn't notice when the phone rang. Severe always gave such missed calls. They ended in a twinkle. He preferred not to ring the warning bells at her home. He had not called in days. She was upset with him, although she knew he was busy with his family and work. He was constantly on her mind. Every song she heard, every phrase she read, every dialogue she heard reminded her of him. At this age, she had again fallen head over heels in love with a man she had met after 18 years. She knew that Severe felt the same, but he just couldn't express himself the way she did. You are the word wizard while I am the inarticulate one. He always teased her. She saw the call and instantly rang back hoping he must be on some tour. They could at least talk. That was how it worked. He informed her whenever he was away from home and could communicate freely. She then adjusted her routine at home for those precious few days. It was as if, at that time he was on leave, available exclusively for her. It helped them to resolve the family versus love conflict. They were torn between their loyalties and this relationship. He picked the call. He was good about that, keeping his promises. He would always pick the call or call back. Always there for you, he had said once. How are you? She asked. Good, he answered. Where are you? She asked. I am here, he said simply. She was irritated. Please, no word games today. I am not well. He instantly backed off. Okay, take it easy. I was only joking. Can you come and meet me? He asked. She suddenly sensed that he was here. Here. He was in her city. She caught a cab to where he was and saw him standing near a shop. Her heart skipped a beat. It always did. She was elated, happy, surprised but annoyed and very angry all at the same time. They started walking and she was in a teary haze. She hit out at him. How long have you been here? He shuffled his feet, averted his gaze and said, I was very busy and then had to go to Bai's place also. Remember, I never got to go anywhere last time. By the way, you have gained weight. His tone was forced casual. Tears welled up in her eyes now. How could he do it? How could he come to the city and not inform her? Was he still grappling with the question that he had posed to Mitali 3 years back? Then she remembered the promise that they had made to each other. They had vowed never to let go of each other. They were soulmates, only friends in this life and waiting for the next. 3 years ago, he had asked her if it was possible to love more than one person. She was confused, but he knew his mind. He was so persuasive that time and had asked her again, just so that he could tell her that he still loved her. She didn't know that he did at all. She had hoped that he loved her, but that was way back in high school. They were classmates since class 2, but poles apart. He was the studious, focused, soft-spoken simpleton whose aim was to be successful and rich. She was intelligent, happy and carefree. Total opposites. She was somewhat aware that he kept sneaking glances at her, looking sideways, staring when she was not looking but then dismissed it as imagination. He now told her, 18 years later, that the sight of her distracted him and he was agonized by the distance between them which his shyness couldn't bridge. He had been going bonkers and just couldn't concentrate on his studies. She longingly thought of those days. She really liked him. She had hoped that one day he will do or say something to show that he was attracted. There was a spark between them, but they were both naive not recognize it. She remembered how once while playing he had held her wrist and wouldn't let go. She wanted that moment to last forever. Then someone pushed them and he released her. He told her now about the moment he had lost his heart to her. She came to school wearing a sari. He just couldn't take her eyes off. To him she looked like a goddess. Beautiful, vibrant, pure and virginal. But as usual, he turned away as soon as she looked up. Another moment lost, another chance gone. He was hoping to become a microbiologist. That was what he was pinning all his hopes on. Becoming a scientist and then stealing the earth from beneath her feet. He didn't realize at the time that it was a very long-term plan. Fate or destiny or whatever name you give it had other plans. His father was transferred out. She wanted him to know. She bought a card about being friends forever and wrote a nice little quote. Superscripting it to, "One of my oldest and best friends ever. Borrowed a bicycle and went to say bye." He was surprised to see her and tongue-tied as usual. Next day he was gone. It was April, the cool month, the Amalthus blossoms month, the season of spring. 17 years later, on an April day, his message lay in her inbox. It was spring again. "Hi, are you the same Mitali? If you are, then I assume you will remember the name. Please revert if you do. Best regards. Severe." Of course, she did. Her heart knew. She avoided communication because she was married now and didn't want to invite censure from a doubting husband, but he persisted. He wanted long answers to his emails, wanted to know how she was doing, wanted to know about her family and kids and more. She fabricated a tale of convenient lies about her husband and family. She had to, because the truth was that her husband was an alcoholic unable to fight depression. She was going through one of the worst phases of her life. He asked for her number, but she avoided. He kept in touch, this time though email. Her life was changing rapidly. She had left his home a week earlier after consistent beatings and a failed suicide attempt. Her husband was sent for rehab. Her only solace was her small son and her work as a tutor. Ma encouraged her to find old friends on the internet. She found Veena her best friend. Mitali gave her number to Veena on a Facebook comment. Veena never called back. A week later, her phone screen displayed an unknown number calling. It was Severe. He had read the message on Veena's page and gathered the courage to call her. This time she also didn't want him to disappear, so she invited him for a text chat. He agreed for an hour later. He was there at the appointed hour. They chatted about each other's lives and careers. He wanted to know if she had old school photos. She did and promised to get them the next day. About her life she spun lies again, saying that her husband was abroad. He could sense that something was wrong but didn't want to hurry her. They bid goodnight and promised to chat again at the same time the next day. The next day she had loads of photographs. Then he sprang the first surprise. He had a picture of her. She felt ecstatic. He told her that he had written to her after he left the city but never got a reply. That was strange because she had replied. The letter got lost. They were definitely star-crossed because when she had not received a reply to her letter, she had nursed a grudge, thinking that he had found new friends in the new city and forgotten the old ones. Little did she know that her letter never reached him. She had decided to move on and not lose life over something that had happened only in her imagination. A few years later, he had written once again. This time she had not replied deliberately. She was going to be married in 2 months. It was too late. She was jolted back from her reverie. Her chat box was flashing. "I love you. I love my wife, but I have always loved you since we were in class 5 and I still do." Severe wrote in the chat box. "I have been looking for you for the last 17 years. I needed you to know this." He told her that he came looking for her after he had secured a job, but she was already married by then. "I never fell out of love with you," he explained. "But you were out of reach now. I too moved on. Last year when I was alone on an assignment, you appeared in my dream. I felt you were in some sort of trouble and needed me. I started searching for you. Tried many old contacts, but you had just disappeared. Fortunately, Dinesh had your email ID. He kept on writing. You again responded in a detached way. But this time I was determined to hold on to you." In her heart, she thanked her God for small mercies, remembering the moment she had sent her resume to Dinesh for applying for a job. "Now will you please come clean and tell me what's wrong with your life?" he urged. "Don't lie anymore, all right?" He typed fervently. "I know something is drastically wrong." She was touched. How did he know? She couldn't keep up the lies anymore. She too needed someone to confide in without being judged. She knew intuitively that he will listen. "Call me," she said simply. He called immediately and they started talking. As the night dawned into day, she told him everything. How her husband, whom she had loved and for whom she had given up everything, beat her up. His alcoholism and refusal to fulfill any of his responsibilities. She told him about the beatings, sexual abuse, and her suicide attempts. At first, Severe simply listened. She poured out all her anguish. He just listened and gathered it all in his heart. Then he consoled her, sympathized with her, but most importantly egged her on the journey of finding her lost self. He reminded her how popular, confident, and spirited she was in school, and how everyone loved her. He reminisced that many boys were vying for her attention back then. They talked incessantly for many nights, exchanged long-worded emails, sent each other love songs and recent photographs. Slowly and surely, through Severe's eyes, she rediscovered herself. They were in love, and this time they knew it. He pressed her to exercise, study further, pray, live. She was happy again. She felt immensely loved and desired. She had forgotten the feeling completely. But theirs was a unique dilemma. He was torn between his loving family and this childhood love. She also had to decide if she wanted to get back to her husband, who was going to be back soon. They could not hurt their loved ones, so they hid it from all. They went back to their families, resigned themselves to their fate, but now vowed never to lose touch. They hadn't even met again, yet deep in their hearts, they knew that they were soulmates. Then a year later came. He called to say that he was coming to her city. She was agog with anxiety. It was as if she was a 16-year-old again, with butterflies in her stomach. He came, they met, and she was on the top of the world. She was awash with pleasure and exhilaration. She could see the admiration and unabashed love in his eyes. They had the best time of their lives. They visited their old haunts and their school. They met with friends, spent time together, shopped, and went on a drive to the hills. She cooked for him, and he ate the spicy food without complaining, although he despised chilies. They did all they were never able to do together and gathered for themselves their own private treasure. Every day he brought her gifts and took her on little dates. For once she was not worried about the world. One of these days, she sent him a text message. "Would you give me something?" He was surprised. "Anything you ask for." He replied, "I want 2 things, and I am not taking a no from you." She texted again, "Don't worry. You have a blanket yes from me." He assured, wondering where it was leading to and calculating his finances. He had already bought her clothes and knickknacks. "First, I want something that will always remind me of you. Something that I can keep close to my heart and preserve forever. Second, I want one full-blown, warm and tight hug." She wrote with trembling fingers. "I am game about the first," he wrote, "but the second one is tough. I won't know how to stop. I don't want to jeopardize both of us. I don't know about all that. A hug is overdue. I deserve it." She pressed on adamantly. That day he bought her a pendant to hang in her necklace. It was surely something she could keep close to her heart. "What about my second gift?" She was bent on it. He didn't say a word and gathered her in her arms and hugged her so tight that she thought she would break. "I am glad I found you and we met. I thank God for these wonderful 18 days. I have relived my lost 18 years in these days. The only thing I regret is that this will die with me. I found the girl I had always loved, and she loves me back too. But I can't share it with a single soul in my life." He lamented, shaking his head. "We know now, and that's enough." She consoled him. He pulled her to the looking glass. Standing behind her, his arms around her waist, his face peeping over her shoulder, he said, "After today, I will always imagine you here in my arms. You must also remember me like this, always there right behind you." "Yes," she whispered, "always there for me." Today all her doubts melted when she looked in his eyes full of love. He will be always there, she thought happily. Next story. Before pressing the doorbell button, I took a deep breath. A shiver unexpectedly ran down my spine, though it was not that cold. No, it wasn't cold at all. It is never cold in April. But the wind was cool and fast. I felt my hair waft this way and that, in a way pulling me away from the door of Alok's house. I fumbled in my purse, extracted a hairband, and summarily arrested my tresses in a ponytail. I was suddenly aware that I had been standing on the doorstep for over a minute. Why was that, I wondered? Was I consciously deferring the moment I had to get in? Was I afraid to see him? Of course not. I snapped at my uncertain mind. If I was afraid, I wouldn't have come in the first place. And what was there to be afraid of? I had known this house for years, precisely a quarter of my 28 years. I used to visit this place before Alok had proposed to me, so there was no reason why I could not, or should not do so after I broke up with him. We were friends after all. After all. I saw my index finger rise and move towards the tiny push button. Would he be expecting me? Of course he would. It was he who had called and asked me to come over. Why though? Who knows? The tip of my index finger was 1 centimeter away from the button. The sun was about to set. I had an hour, perhaps, before people at my house would start looking for me. I wasn't allowed to stay out late. I pushed the button. The sound was the same as ever, ding-dong. But it made me shiver. What was I doing here? What about all the promises of not seeing him, not meeting him? What about being a good girl till I was married off? Why did I come here? Because he wanted to meet. Was that reason enough? The door opened before I could answer myself. At one glance, it was apparent that he was alone in the house. It wasn't written over his face. No, he wasn't happy about it, not sad either, indifferent actually. Still, he opened the door in shorts and an old half-shirt. Totally indecent. Evidence enough. He smiled weakly as he ushered me inside and locked the door behind us. I tried to think if this was an inappropriate behavior, but my heart was fluttering wildly, sending little blood to my brain to think. I felt dizzy. Perhaps all my blood was shunted to my adrenals. My eyes were open, but all I could see were a million fantasies I had for a situation like this. When he would lock the door, if only he had done it before the separation. He was trembling slightly and he was pale. This registered in my mind and I was pulled back into the present. "What's the matter?" I asked, failing miserably in my attempt to keep my voice casual and unconcerned. I knew it, but I had to try. After all, we were broken up. "Thank you for coming, Menka." It was so odd to hear my own name in his voice. He had used my full name after maybe half a decade. I suddenly felt that I liked him calling me Menz more. My throat was constricted somehow. Not only could I not speak, I felt difficulty in breathing, too. I knew the end of our relationship had broken him. He suffered more than me, well, in some respects, at least. Looking at him today made me want to forget everything. Family, society, life, everything. But, I had taken my decision of parting ways after considering every alternative, every scenario. This one included. My throat cleared. With a straight face and steady voice, I said, "Why did you want to see me?" This was rude for me to be asking him this question. I could see his indecision too well. He was fighting himself. He did want to say or do something, but with me standing in front of him in person made him doubt his thoughts. I yearned to hug him, to just let him know that anything was fine with me, that he shouldn't worry at all. Would you come to my room? Please? I walked ahead of him, careful not to let any part of my body touch any part of his. Touch can have disastrous effects on self-control. There was a strange smell in his bedroom. It was his room freshener, all right, but it was something else too, making the whole air a bit pungent. But I ignored it and sat on his bed. After a moment's thoughts, I took my sandals off and settled on the bed, reclining on a couple of pillows. My favorite position. Alok took his slippers off and clambered on the bed, sitting as close to me as possible without touching. In that move, I noticed something that clearly told me that he hadn't worn any underwear. The observation disturbed me. I was afraid to think what he was planning to do, and I actually wanted him to do what I obviously thought he was about to do. Obviously, I was confused. But he said in that same weak voice, "I miss you. Every day, every moment." My heart stopped, as did my breathing. I don't know how to say it. It seems filmy, I know. But I cannot live without you. His earnestness was killing me. Not only he was saying to me exactly what I had been forcing myself not to say to him, but he was also saying it in a voice which made me shudder. I could feel the surrender he had made to his own heart. I was aware of the attempts he had made to move on. And now I could see the effect the failure of each attempt had on him. I felt him shrinking in front of me, Then I realized my eyes had welled with tears. He hadn't finished. It wasn't your fault that we couldn't be together. He didn't believe it, but I knew it wasn't his fault either. But as it is, I find myself unable to forget you. I couldn't speak. I know you do. Yet I want to ask you, do you still love me? I couldn't hold on any longer. Any moment now my heart would burst open through all the barriers I had consciously erected around it and gain control of my body and soul. And I would do all those things which are incorrect, unethical, irrational, sinful, and of course detrimental to my future and the future of my family. I extended my arm. I touched him. He understood. It was my answer. An affirmative. I was crying now. I knew what was going to ensue and I knew I would regret it. I wanted to push him away and run back to my home. And I wanted to stay with him, to love him until I died. Two choices. Which one should I choose? But as I said, I knew what I was going to do already. There were no choices. There was just destiny. He embraced me, let me cry over his shoulder. He was trembling. He was cold. But he was mine, now and forever. When the last of my sobs dried out, he drew back and smiled at me. I smiled too. He lit the candle he had kept on the bedstand. I asked what that was for and he said, "You are too concerned about future. That is our future burning." Then he removed his shirt, then his shorts. This was the point of no return. I could run away and forget that this evening ever existed in my life. But as I said, there were no choices. I made to remove my dupatta. He held my hand. He said, "Touch me." I touched his soft lips with the tips of my fingers, then felt his neck, at his chest. I could feel the thumping of his heart. I sat up and embraced his naked body, burying my face in his chest. A moment later, he forcefully freed himself of me and threw me back on the bed. No pillows this time. I was supine. He jumped over me and kissed my lips fiercely. I could feel my breath being sucked out of me. He knew I liked it. He was over me, his weight crushing my small body. He knew I liked it. His hands were inside my clothes, touching me all over. He knew I liked it. Only 1,000 times we had done this, stopping just short of intercourse, for the sake of my virginity which I wanted to save for the future. I knew he wouldn't stop today. I didn't want him to. He withdrew, giving me time to breathe before he crushed me again. He removed my dupatta. It was attached with a safety pin to my suit. He knew it, but he wasn't interested in fumbling with safety pins today. He pulled roughly. I heard the thin cloth tear. A voice inside my head screamed, saying things like, "How would I explain that at home?" etc. I didn't have the courage to acknowledge the warnings. A moment later, I felt his hands on my chest. He gripped my suit at the neckline and tore it as if the $1,000 dress was merely a paper plane. Again my inner voice, again my reluctance to listen. And somewhere deep within, my heart knew that this was what I wanted. To feel helpless, too afraid of the future to actually fear it. Because the future was burning. In less than a minute I was naked, my dress in pieces. My eyes were closed. And I was happy. The future was burning. He attacked my breasts like a hungry wolf. I felt pain. I felt pleasure. I responded. I bit him, dug my nails in his skin. I knew he liked it. I was breathless. I was almost paralyzed, not knowing anything outside the two of us. I wasn't aware of the 2 drops of tears that escaped the corners of my eyes until he asked what was wrong. "I don't know," was the only response I could find. Somehow I added, "Don't stop." Yes, I didn't know whether the pain of my defloration gave me pleasure or the pleasure of finally being one with him gave me pain. In my numb mind, a message flashed, "Doesn't matter." Then after a very, very long time, everything slowed down. We were both covered in sweat and satisfaction. But neither of us could smile, though I tried and felt he was trying too. The "doesn't matter" signal flashed again. He was kissing me again. I was breathless again. His hands were busy in stimulating my neck. But something was different. His fingers were different. Felt as if he was doing something else. And I was really out of breath this time. While I kiss, I always forget having a pair of nostrils for breathing. And presently I was fighting for breath. Nothing new, I thought. I tried to breathe through my nose. Nothing happened. I tried again. He released me from the kiss. It took me 1 full minute to breathe enough to oxygenate my asphyxiating brain. Another minute to notice a sharp stinging sensation at the neck where his hands had been doing something. But despite my rational thoughts screaming gibberish in my mind, I smiled. "You almost killed me." He was smiling now. I wondered why a part of my neck burnt. Then I saw what he had in his hands, an empty syringe. I didn't understand anything, not even when he filled the syringe with a milky liquid from a half-empty vial. Nothing when he pushed the injection into his neck vein. He was smiling. I thought I ought to smile too. I did, though I couldn't smile fully. I felt exhausted, and the pungent smell was not helping my exhausted and strangely clouded brain. I lay down trying to rest as I felt him reaching close to me, touching at the most sensitive spots. I cringed, then moaned, or at least tried to. I noticed that the burning candle was almost finished. Then I saw that the torn pieces of my favorite suit were too close to the stub of the candle. They could catch fire as the candle sunk lower. And some pieces of clothes were in contact with the bed too. My mind made tediously difficult speculation. If the fire from the candle ignited the clothes, the bed sheet might burn, too. My eyelids were heavy. I allowed them to curtain my eyes. The smell became acute as my sense of vision shut down. Yes, I knew that smell. I got the same smell when I went to the pump to fuel my scooty. I didn't like the smell, but I did like the kiss, and he was kissing me. This smell of fuel was coming from almost every inch of the bed sheet as if it was soaked in petrol and dried. And the liberal spray of room freshener was to mask that smell. His kisses were too slow, as if he was too exhausted, just like me. Maybe it was due to the injection. "That doesn't matter," signal flashed, this time in different colors inside my skull. I smiled. In fact, I chuckled. With that chuckle, my eyelids snapped open, only to droop a second later. But in that second, I saw that the bed on which I and Elok had made love was on fire. But I couldn't feel anything. No heat, no pain. The candle was nowhere to be seen. The future had burnt out. I giggled, then slept. Next story, Kabir had always been notorious and had always used it to distract Kia from her breakups. It's not like he was oblivious to breaking hearts. But unlike Kia, he did not volunteer for it by going into relationships. Girls just broke their heart over the fact that he didn't get into one. And why not? He was a typical chic magnate with his class president post coupled with his silky dark brown hair. The fact that he was sensible, intelligent, and smiled with a sparkle in his eyes was not helping either. He was not particularly handsome, but he was devastatingly charming and a gentleman to the boot. Or maybe the good hair thing was the real deal here. It may sound naive, but guys having soft, great hair is a big hit with girls. Kia always was tired explaining to her girlfriends that she is of no help getting her brother to date one of them. She always nagged him about it because she had to tolerate all the nagging from her friends. Also, because, why the hell not? Kabir was great with studies. All his free time went doing something or the other around the house or in bowling with his gang. Concluding, he had a lot of free time. It's not like he was not into girls, just not into any at his school or any other school in their area. Which was confusing because Delhi was a hot zone for girls. Also, they were 21 now, both Kia and Kabir, living with their 2 other cousins away from home to complete their studies in a second most productive metropolitan in India. I guess Kabir was looking for something more than, "He has such great hair." Kia, on the other hand, needed just half a reason to start dating someone, and it took only the other half of it for her to break up with them. Thus, our 2 twins lived their life in a 2 BHK on Vasant Kunj. Kia, an art graduate, pursuing her interest in cinema, was paving her way to Mumbai, while Kabir, a software testing major, was targeting IBM for his final year internship. As they sat sharing the last packet of gems in the starless blue night, looking at the sparkling streets of tall buildings and buzzing roads, Kabir edged Kia to share her distress with him. It was easy to spot that she was distressed because nothing other than that would convince our size 4 babe with a sunny Leon poster hanging on her wall to hog sugary food at 2 a.m. in the night. After listening to Kia banter on about another one of her silly affairs, Kabir advised, "Stop dating random guys." Kia mimicking him, Kia said, Start dating random girls. Kabir? Really? Do you think we will ever find what we are looking for that easily? Exclaimed Kabir. Do you know what you are looking for? Snorted Kia. I know what we are looking for, said Kabir with a knowing grin. We, as in both of us, you know what even I am looking for. Kia's famous sarcasm found its way in. Yes, little sister, said Kabir, teasing her back. I am not your little sister. You were born 7 minutes before me, exasperated Kia, and continued with a pressed smile. What am I looking for? We need to travel some 1,000 kilometers and go back in time by 25 years for that, said Kabir, taking Kia with him into a narrative time machine. 1995, Gujarat, India. It was a beautiful evening in September 1995, when Mohan decided to give a surprise visit to Prerna. It was quite chilly for anyone to be out with 15 degrees of odd temperature that night. Temperatures did not drop that low for the month of September in Ahmedabad, Gujarat. But this visit was of a dire need to Mohan. Prerna was leaving for her first job to Mumbai in a few days, and Mohan had a feeling she was avoiding him. In spite of their breakup a few months ago and irrespective of the fights they were having before it, Mohan and Prerna were inseparable when it came to friendship. With less exposure to the world and a lesser knowledge of self, both were undoubtedly immature but shared a very mature and respected bond. From the first time that they met, Prerna felt a connection for Mohan, and Mohan reciprocated with equal sincerity. Mohan understood Prerna, and Prerna understood what's good for Mohan. They both knew how rare it was to have something like this and were sensible enough to not put it at stake, just because their compatibility in love was missing. Was it really missing, or was it a drawn conclusion after a frugal attempt at the relationship by two souls, who were still to find themselves, is a mystery. The love between Prerna and Mohan was visibly strong. Mohan was the center point around which Prerna built her everything, while Prerna was Mohan's everything. There were no beliefs, morals, or decisions that Mohan would stand by if Prerna was to be upset over it. There was no decision Prerna would leave if it would hamper Mohan in any way. Getting over each other did not come easy to both, but both had their own different ways of dealing with it. Prerna tried to find distraction while Mohan took to devotion. Mohan had faith that at some point, she would return to him. That faith was the only thing which kept him going, the strength that made him listen to her talking about other guys, the motivation that made him knock her window on the odd chilly night of September 29, 1995. Oh God, Mohan, what are you doing here? It's so cold out today, bantered Prerna as she opened her window pane to let him in. Tell me about it. Why are you not answering my calls? His worry inquired her patience. I was busy, Mohan. Why would you expect me to answer all of your calls? Why are you even here? You could get sick. The edge in Prerna's voice was unexpected to Mohan. Hey, why are you getting upset? I was just worried. Well, don't be and stop coming here this way. We are not together anymore. Prerna spoke, throwing Mohan off guard. I know that. I just thought of checking up on you. I have Vishal to check up on me. Check up on yourself, Mohan. Have you decided what to do with your life? Did you find your interest yet? Are you doing any job or thinking of further studies in any field? Whoa, I will do it, Prerna, but what's this about Vishal? Vishal is from Gandhinagar. We are dating since past month and are traveling together for a job to Mumbai. Prerna did not know why she had not told Mohan about it, but she knew that she felt obligated to do so from the moment she agreed to date Vishal. That obligation was a problem. It was a sign that she was not over Mohan and she did not want to give in to it. She had to disconnect herself from him. She needed to disconnect herself from him, because she was everything to him. Prerna did not know much, but she did know that no person should find their whole identity in another person. She knew that as long as she was around, Mohan would never find himself, and that was not good for Mohan. There was a screeching silence between them after she revealed that she was dating someone. The kind of silence that both never thought to face when with each other. Well, say something, uttered Prerna. Mohan was shivering, with anger or hurt. Who knew? But when he finally spoke, only questions he had were, so, if I can't check up on you because Vishal is there right now, what am I to you exactly? Some backup option for you that you drag along? A toy to distract you, if Vishal, or any other guy that you keep mindlessly talking about, leaves you someday. What? This is utter nonsense, Mohan. You know that's not true, said Prerna, shocked by such blame. No, Prerna. All I know is, I am not your dog. Leaving Prerna with that remark, the two shattered souls spent nights crying over their failed love. Prerna tried to contact Mohan before she left for Mumbai and even after. She had to know what was going on with him, had to make sure he was on track and that leaving him was actually worth it. But he was not. Mohan spent his days repenting, losing himself in Prerna and starving his days to pain. 1998. Mumbai, India. It took Mohan a significant amount of time to get over Prerna's betrayal and find himself as a writer. But it did not take him long to realize how wrong he had been about her. Maturity, for Mohan, brought with it a plethora of reasons why he needed to form his own individual identity uninfluenced by Prerna's predisposition. He knew that she might not love him, might love Vishal or someone else, but she definitely acted on what she thought was good for him. As the feeling of being used left his heart, a feeling of regaining old ties crept in. They were both in touch with each other's whereabouts owing to the same set of college friends. But ashamed by his senseless hurts, he found peace in his realizations and never confronted her. Today he had a book launch in Mumbai about autism and ways to deal with it, and Prerna was going to visit for sure. It was a successful event, at the end of which he found a slim pretty girl walking her red salwar kameez and dangling jumkas towards his neatly pressed white khadi shirt and brown trousers. Wow, you are famous, Mohan. I so did not know it, praised Prerna with a big proud smile on her face. My publisher says so, he humbly replied. Before he could get caught up in an after-event book signing, they decided to meet over dinner to catch up on old times, hopefully the good ones, and parted ways. It must have been the prayers of all their friends that their dinner went along blissfully. After a heartfelt dessert, Mohan and Prerna found themselves walking towards the Marine Drive. So, still with Vishal? Mohan inquired in an attempt to find a topic to talk about after 3 hours of life updates. No, that was a long time ago, Prerna replied, quite nervous on where this would backtrack to. In her mind, she was guilty of always knowing what's not good for Mohan but lost in her fantasy love story, never realizing that she was one of those things. The same nervousness reflected in Mohan too, for his own faults. He very awkwardly said, Listen, I wanted to tell you something since a long time, but it's not coming off easily. This change of topic was a relief for Prerna, and she replied in a playful tone, Oh, is this where you tell me about your love interest, big man? Haha. No, I wanted to talk about all those things I said back when we had our last fight, he replied, somehow easing into the topic. Listen, Mohan, I don't know where you are taking this conversation, but I am really sorry it all happened. I couldn't explain it to you because it wouldn't have worked that way. But we were not at all mature, and at that point, I was not good for you, irrespective of the love we felt. I know it hurt you, but I also know that I did the right thing. Prerna hasted her replies to avoid another fight. Calm down, Prerna. I know that now. I am sorry too. I will never put our friendship to test again. I don't think you ever treated me like a dog, and I know you loved me sincerely. Mohan calmly expressed his years of turmoil in a matter of few sentences. Maybe it was Prerna or it was the magic of being at Marine Drive, but something helped him discuss the most tormenting incident in his past. It was as if the courage he was searching for since long was finally found in the sea. Rocks were transmitting it up to the rim and the wind passed it on to him. You are wrong, Mohan. Prerna sat there putting a question mark to his newly found relief. You are right that I never thought of you in any disrespectful way, but you are wrong about the fact that I loved you. And about our friendship, you may not, but I want to put it to test. What do you mean, Prerna? The only reason I broke up with you is that you needed to find yourself. You never understood that. I don't want to be friends with you. You said, I loved you. It's past tense. Truth is, I still do. I want to check if now I might actually be good for you. Prerna could not believe the words flowing out of her own mouth, but she found her turmoil evaporating in thin air, irrespective of what Mohan had to say to her proposal. She sighed, then smiled, feeling a novel sanctity. She found him doing the same. And for the next couple or 15 minutes, people at Marine Drive found them both, laughing uncontrollably over the success of their love story. That one time, I think it was the sea, but 6 months later, it was all Mohan Prerna, taking them to marry me. Epilogue. That's one deep bond, brother. I don't believe we will ever find anything like it, exclaimed Kia. I wonder why they were laughing though, she furthered. Well, I have a philosophy for it. You go through the extravagant amount of pain in life, finding your wealth as you struggle to get away from something, only to end up realizing that that something is the start and the end of everything else. Not everybody believes it, but everybody experiences it at some point in their life. That soulmate kind of love. Replied Kabir, how do you conclude that's the kind of love we want? Pointed out Kia, because it's the kind of love our parents had. It's what we have grown knowing. It's what we think is legit. It's all a psychology, little sister, added his notorious side. Unable to control itself even amidst a sharing as deep. I am not your little sister. We are twins for God's sake. Anyways, are you saying that is our parents' love story? Replied Kia. Kabir nodded in agreement and shocked Kia. Whoa, that's unfair. How come I don't know it and you do? Because I am elder to you.